Okay.
Oh, it went away.
Is it better?
Yes, so
Yes.
great. Like
Yeah,
everything, like all of the noise just went away
yeah,
somewhere.
much better.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Very good.
All right. Awesome. So we're live. Um, Okay, so first off, welcome to you guys and everybody who's watching. Just a quick introduction about myself. I'm Seenam Khan. I'm currently a senior service designer at Mobile Live, as well as one of the moderators for UXDP with Arsalan Kanzainavez. And we have this panel discussion today to talk about interview guidelines for design specifically. And with me, I have Aisha Hassan, who's a CX strategist at UBL, and Ahmed Hashmi, who's a design lead at Arbisoft. So yeah, over to Hashmi for you to give your quick introduction.
Okay, well, hey everybody. I can't really see how many people I'm talking to, but I'm hoping it's 10,000 people. Because इससे कितने लोगों से मैं जनरल नंबर से बात नहीं करता. I only go live for like 10K plus. Yes, my name is Ahmed Hashmi. I've been working at Arbisoft for almost 5 years now. I started as an individual contributor, as a user experience researcher, designer, and over the years I've held multiple roles at the company. And for the past 2 years, what I have done is I've created my own team of designers, and now like product people as well. And that's where like my experience of hiring starts. So I started doing hiring in 2019, like some mid 2019, and I've just conducted multiple rounds, not only just for my own team but also for other teams at the company.
Great. And Aisha, what about you?
Hi guys, so I'm Aisha Hassan and I have been working at the UBL Digital Lab since late 2019. Prior to that, I was in Milan and Dubai. I've worked as a CX and a service design consultant over there, and then over here, I've been a CX strategist at the UBL Digital Lab in Karachi, and I am working in fintech space and banking. Very forward-thinking lab that we have, and we recruit very actively locally from locally from the institutions as well as from people who graduated from abroad, etc. Across the country, we also hire in Islamabad. So our design team is spread across Islamabad as well as here. And yeah, so I assist Gulrez, who is the head of the lab, in this hiring process. So he does most of it, and then I assist him in that.
Awesome, great. Okay, and Aisha, can you talk about how big the design team is at your company currently?
So it's about 6 to 7 people right now, and we're
Mhm.
rapidly growing. So it's
Oh,
a
okay.
rapidly growing. We're always looking out for talent, good talent, and we're always in the summers as well as the winters looking for interns as well. So we've had interns working for us as well.
Okay, awesome, great. And apologies for that. And then Hashmi, what about you?
So my current design team is 6 people. That's not the only design team at the company. There's another one, and then we have different designers working on different services like across the company. I didn't hire them though; like they were there before me. But
Oh, okay.
everybody on my team, like I've hired.
Oh, okay, awesome. Oh, that's great. Okay, and then Aisha, can you talk about? So we're going to talk about the hiring process at your company. So can you just talk a bit about, how, how does it start? What's like the, how do people get into the process, and what does it look like?
So we normally have job postings, and we're also open to receiving people like reaching out to us over LinkedIn or personally, or we hire internally also. So they reach out to us either on LinkedIn or they apply through the open job posting on the website, and then they send across their resume. There's a first screening, and then we ask them to send across any work that they have, so a portfolio of work, and then we have sort of a preliminary discussion about the portfolio, and then something that's a little more in depth. Like maybe we'll give them a case study, depending on the profile and depending on the position that they're coming for. So we either give them some sort of a task, or we get them to talk us through one of the projects that they've done, right? So it's 2 to 3 steps, and then the last one is with HR. So that's what it looks like. But it's fluid depending on the role and depending on the seniority of the role itself, the profile of the candidate. So yeah, that's what it looks like.
You're on
Sorry.
mute, Sina.
My bad. Such a pandemic issue that we have going on. Sorry. Yeah. So, just like the steps that you mentioned, could you just talk about like the outcome and what is it that you're looking for at each sort of the design task and the screening interviews?
Yeah, so we're looking for, obviously it has to align with what we're asking for in the JD. Of course, we have to look that, so but we have people applying from very different varying educational backgrounds. So we could have people from engineering applying to us, we could have people from business applying to us, arts, humanities. We're open to all kinds of profiles. So we don't immediately cross someone out if their resume is not of a design background, that doesn't show any design competencies as such. What we look for, though, we look that they are sort of not just excelling in what they have studied, but also extracurricular. So what else do they do? What are their interests? So a resume has to be very holistic in that way. Is it not just listing down all that you've studied, but also what else you did in school, or some other interests that you have, some hobbies that you pursued, something that shows more personality in a resume is what we really look for. And then we screen and we shortlist, and then we look for so that's when we actually speak to them in the first screening, where they can talk to us a little bit about their personal interests, what they did, why they did what they did. So the major that they chose, why did they choose it, right? So some context to that resume on top, and then we determine whether that person is best suited for a case study or for just describing a project that they might have done in school. And what we're looking for essentially is that they can articulate and tell us what they did, why they did it, and what their learnings were. So really, somebody who can articulate it very well. It doesn't have to be an exceptional real world experience that they have to describe, something that's gone live. Like it can be something that they did in university as part of a course, as a research project, but they just need to be able to articulate it very well, and explain it to us. That's what essentially we're looking for. And of course, then we also look for a culture fit. So is there more to them than just what they looked like on paper? So we ask them about what else their interests are, how are they, just to assess if they can work well in teams and gel in with the culture that we built.
Yeah. And I think especially UBL, which is like a large organization, so a designer working in-house in like such a huge organization, I think being a culture fit is very important. And I think you need to have like a certain type of personality to sort of work in such a complex division with so many hierarchies and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. And Ahmed, what about you? Like, what's the process like at Arbisoft? What is it that you're looking like? What outcomes are you looking for at each step of the process?
Okay. I just before I tell you my thing, I just wanted to point out that Arbisoft is a very large organization, and we've got very many different teams. The types of projects are very different. The departments are very different. So the interview process looks a bit different for these different teams. So when I talk about Arbisoft, I will mostly be talking about my process and how it's been for my design team. So it is definitely like a multi-step process. You do have to talk to me or somebody else more than once. ये तो हो गई होगा, right? So as Aisha said, we accept sort of applications or interested people from our job posting website product called HireStream, or through LinkedIn as well. Like, do people sometimes do reach out and they're like, hey, like I'm interested, can we have a conversation? And then depending on that message, I decide if I want to have a conversation or not.
Actually, that's a very interesting thing, because I actually look for what they say and how they present themselves. And I actually prefer when they reach out through LinkedIn, because it shows a lot of personality. It also shows a lot of initiative. Like, you reached out to me. You are
Hmm.
interested, you look through my profile, you look through what we do at the lab, and that shows some initiative on their behalf where they've looked you up, they've looked the place up, and then they've made an effort to craft a message which is personalized to you and the company, and then they've, so it's, I actually like it more. I prefer
Yeah,
it.
true. And it also just it shows a little bit of like your research skills, right? I mean, you care about something and you want to find out more, as opposed to कि, आप जाके वहाँ पे डालें like dear concerned, please
Exactly.
like look at my application. I'm just like, who's concerned right now? I'm concerned about that message. But anyway, so that's like the first step, right? So you have to apply like somewhat.
Hmm.
Um, so the first interview that I conduct, I am very like culture first type of person. Like that's what I go for first. And mostly I'm looking for culture additions as opposed to fit. Mostly because we're in such a like a nascent growing stage. So I'm just looking for personalities that can like expand, nurture in like very different things. Nurture is the name of the team I created, by the way. So RBSoft, right? So yeah, so the first interview is very much is less of an interview and more of a conversation.
Yeah.
And I tell people that right at the front. I'm just like, hey, this is a conversation. Let's talk. Let's figure it out. After that, depending on how that goes, I usually give them an assignment that they have to like work on, and come back for the assignment review and a more technical interview. So अभी तक जो मेरा process है, it is less focused on the portfolio that they already have, and more focused on, like what's the quality of the conversation that we just are able to generate in like a few hours. And then after, let's say these things go well, then there's like a small interview with the people's operations and development office, which is the HR of our company. And they have their own things. They also like assess a little bit of culture fit, and then they talk about everything related to salary and like benefits and all of that stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. And just sort of, going back to the LinkedIn message, what kind of a LinkedIn message would you like respond to? Thing, because like cold messaging is like a thing, but what really catches your eye, both of you?
Go
Do I
ahead.
go first? Do you want to go?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I am really looking for something that something that is a bit unique, right? I feel like given the amount of messages I've seen on LinkedIn, like I can very clearly see that
Hmm.
ये तो copy pasta है. So
Hmm.
uh, just like something, like just give me something. Okay, hey, like you actually went ahead, found something out, and then you want to talk to me about that. And also the
Okay.
length of the message. Like if you're gonna send me, 10 paragraphs, then I'm just gonna be like,
Okay, that makes sense. That's a very good tip. I think like an insight into reaching out to hiring managers. Aisha, what about you?
I think what I look for is, again, not something that's very generic and copy pasted. Something that I know is not a template that you just, like taken off of and just copied and pasted and sent to a number of, I would like to see how you can draw a parallel with what your skill set are, what you offer, and what we have in place. So
Yeah.
is it aligned? How are you aligned? So something, even a line of, okay, I did this, and so I thought I might be a good fit for what you do there. And
Hmm.
that instantly shows me that they've looked me up, they've drawn that parallel, so they're clear about what they have, what they can offer me, and how
Yeah.
they can fit. So that in itself shows me three, four things, even if it's just one line, you know.
Hmm.
So somebody could be saying, oh, I did a project and I did this very in-depth UX research and focus groups. And I thought that, I heard that this is something that you really emphasize on at the UBL Digital Lab. And I feel like I could bring my skills and add value to the
Hmm.
team. And that instantly will be like, yes, I will definitely be more keen to pursue that kind of a profile
Hmm.
than something that's more generic and, oh, here's my resume, here's my portfolio. I'd be grateful if you could take a look. I would take a look. course, but like, it's just a lot more personality, a lot more initiative when you see a message that's more personalized to you and to what the company and how you fit in that. So that's what I think for.
Okay,
True.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so we've talked about LinkedIn message में आपने क्या चीजें सीखी हैं so that that you can catch somebody's attention. But then generally during the hiring process, what are some of the qualities or like what are some of the traits that you're looking for? And I'm not in with the hard skills, but like what kind of people are you guys looking for your team?
Emma, do you want to go first?
Sure. Aisha already like touched upon this like a little bit, but I am definitely always looking for good communicators. Uh, that's a huge thing. Like I keep telling designers this, and other people who like work with designers, like are in any sort of like design field. I'm just like, yeah, communication is going to be the majority of your job,
Yeah.
regardless of like what you want to call yourself. Like I am very not picky about titles at all. Like that's what I tell everybody who I'm talking to and everybody who gets hired as well. My team, if like they're listening, they're probably not because it's Sunday. I tell them just I am just like यार तुमने अपने आप को जो title देना है ना वो जाके दे दो. Like great. I don't care, right? As long as you can communicate whatever it is that you're doing at any given point. Awesome, cool. I don't care what you call yourself. So that's something that I'm always looking for, like a good communicator, a good storyteller. So A, because already, yes, like because that's most of our job, but also one of the criteria that I have for my positions is that I need the person to be ready to start talking to a client on day one. Like that is something that nobody has time to train you on. Like you need to come in and I should be confident enough that okay, I can you know tell you okay, hey, like please come with me in that meeting, and you will be able to, right? Or फिर like 2-3 दिन बाद I'll just be like please go take that meeting. तो इसमें ये थोड़ा सा एक it's a very tricky subject, I would be honest, like क्योंकि मैं वही सोचता हूँ कि अच्छा like तो यहाँ पे आपकी English speaking abilities is a factor, for sure. Uh, that's just the way it is. I mean, हमारा so at least our business office में majority of our clients are international. तो हमारा जो काफी ज़्यादा काम है वो सारा like you have to be able to communicate in English to do that. So I think that's something I look for mainly.
Yeah, I think and building upon that, that's all very, very important. I think we look for the exact same things. We need somebody who can hit the ground running. We do train on the job. So hard skills we can teach you. We can teach you Figma. We can teach you all of these hard skills. This is not the problem. The problem comes when you lack the soft skills of having that empathy to speak to a spectrum of stakeholders. There's internal stakeholders, there's external stakeholders, there's seniors, there's juniors, there's customers who are very different in profile. So there could be a business customer, but then there could be an individual customer who is, a farmer that you have to interview. But then there's somebody who's very valuable to us as a customer because he's very high net worth. So you have to have that empathy and that fluidity in the way that you present yourself and that confidence of being on your own also, because it's just a requirement that you have to have that kind of confidence, but you also have to not come across as somebody who's too you have to be humble, you have to be very empathetic in the way that you present yourself. So it's a combination of both hard and soft skills, but more soft skills that we and some you just have to have the right attitude. So you have to be keen to learn. You have to be curious.
Yeah.
You have to have an open mind. You cannot come in and think that you're the user first. You're an advocate. You're not the user. So there's a lot of designers who come in who've had experience in other industries or who've had, done a lot of projects, etc. And they come in with this, with this either this sort of confidence that or overconfidence that they know everything. But banking, in fact, is very different. It's very complicated. It's very complex, and it takes time to understand that. But that said, any place, no two banks also will be the same. So you'll have to immerse yourself in that culture. You'll have to come with an open mind. You cannot come with the mindset of I know everything already, or I'm the user, so I can assume. You cannot make those assumptions. There's no room for it. You have to go through the process, the UX process of the design thinking process of actually doing that, the due diligence, that research to come up with a very in-depth understanding of your stakeholders. And for that, you require these soft skills more than the hard skills. And that's what we look
Yeah, true. I just want to echo Aisha here about that point of curiosity and like wanting to learn. I think that's so key. That's so crucial. Uh, Particularly, I think the design industry just stage pe hum hain, even though like we've made strides over like the past few years, we're still very much in like the nascent stage. So at this point, I don't feel like you can, really just be like, नहीं ये तो मैंने करना ही नहीं है बिल्कुल, like नहीं ये आप नहीं होना चाहिए. So I don't, that doesn't really like work well in interviews. Uh, so that's something I really wanted to echo. And the other thing, yes, about like the soft skills, or like, as Jared Spool calls them, power skills now, or like somebody else calls them. But that's exactly the thing, right? मतलब अगर आप Figma आपको सिर्फ एक basic level पे आता है, तो ठीक है, you get hired, you do a 2 week long course on YouTube for free. ठीक है, उसी दौरान like you're working on another project, you're applying all of those learning. To third, fourth week, good. आप like Figma mid-level pro हो गए हैं. ठीक है ना? So that's boom, 1 month, great training time. However, अगर आप if you're unable to communicate fluently with your team member or the client, या फिर
Yeah.
आप अपने आइडियाज ही सही तरह जो है अल्फाज में नहीं कह सकते या लिख सकते, टू 6 महीने कहीं नहीं गए, राइट? लाइक वो ये नहीं हो सकता कि आप 2 हफ्ते का कोर्स ले लें और तीसरे हफ्ते आप लाइक फिट किस्म की प्रपोजल लिखना शुरू करती हैं. नहीं डूड, लाइक वो आपको तो बहुत टाइम लगेगा. सो दैट्स द टाइम दैट majority of the people, particularly in fast-paced tech industries, don't have.
Yeah. And I think just one thing, like two things that I really wanted to sort of add on is the first one being, there is this perception कि मैं अगर design की हूँ या if I'm working within the design team, तो मेरा business या product या tech people, I really don't have to understand where they're coming from. And I think empathy at work is something that designers sometimes forget to exercise, right? And I think वो बहुत ज़्यादा important है. And like personally speaking for myself, I've done project management, I've done product management, I've sort of experimented either other, and I think it really shaped up the way that I now sort of take my design process forth and the kind of things that I considered क्योंकि मुझे पता ही ना होता if I had not experienced all of those other things, right? So I think as designers, it's very important, you go out, you reach out, even if you're not, going to a new role to learn it, just even sitting down with your business counterpart and just asking them, okay, what do you do? Aap kya karte hain? That would help you in understanding how you guys can work better together, as well as, where they can support you and where you can support them, right? Because collaboration is key for design. And the second thing is, language. So like if for example currently I'm working with international clients, so my medium of communication is English primarily, but previously at EasyPS and Telnor, because there was so much of user research that we were doing, कि I think मेरी उर्दू जितनी साफ on the job हुई है उतनी नहीं हुई थी उससे पहले, right? Because we're all bilingual, we speak both languages, and then I'm a Pathan, so मुझे पश्तो भी आती है, and I think that for the very first time I understood the power of knowing more than one language. क्योंकि KPK में मेरे लिए research conduct करना was very easy, right? And that's a very tough segment to sort of conduct interviews with. But just coming from the same background, knowing the language, knowing the cultural context really well, I think as a design researcher or as a designer, that's like the power skill that you have that you can only get through your heritage, right? Like you can learn it, but majority of it you'll get it from that. So अगर आपको सिंधी, बलोची, Punjabi, Pashto, अगर if you know it fluently, or any of the other languages, I think that's something that you should proudly bring to the table. because that really gives you an edge.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think इसी point पे I wanted to give you brought in such an interesting perspective कि let's just say कि आपकी जो spoken verbal English है, it's not the strongest suit that you have, right? So lean into all of the other languages or language that you may already know, and then look for positions or look for companies that do work with them.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Ask the
And
company about their clients and ask them कि यार अच्छा like मेरे पास ये एक unique language या फिर like मैं इसमें बहुत fit हूँ, तो do you have clients that already are in this segment, and then go ahead
yeah,
and you can just like run like entire teams in that.
exactly. And also, like, considering the startup culture that's coming up, and we're creating the really hyper local products. So, वहाँ पे तो, अब design research के लिए, Naisha, I think you can resonate with that. Like when you go out, or अब Gujranwale, Central Punjab, या, like interior Sindh में, if you're going, nobody really cares कि आप कहाँ से आए, हमने कहाँ से degree ली हुई है, right? Yeah, how good is your English? If you
Exactly.
can't communicate with them, or if you can't even fit into their cultural context, right? So how I am during my office hours, or how I dress up, versus when I'm out in the field, I think being very mindful of that. That's all part of empathy, but I think very like tangible things that we can exercise as
Yes.
designers.
And that reminds me of when we went into the field this one time, Interior Sense, to interview farmers and landowners, and how just understanding their user behavior of how they make payments and how they exchange value, how do the bank basically, and how do they exchange payments and goods, so that we could design interventions around them. It was a very s- very different ecosystem, right? So you're going into interior Sindh, you're going to Tandualam, and
Yeah.
you're just so you have to be so mindful, very
Yeah.
respectful. They're very
Hmm.
responsive. If
Hmm.
you come from a place which is not, you're empathetic. So I took a najrak with me. I was wearing
Hmm.
culturally appropriate things. I took, and I took something with me to give to them as a token,
Yeah.
some mithai or something from here, to say कि मैं आई हूँ ये करने. So setting that sort of context really helps you get the
Yeah.
user or the interview very comfortable.
Hmm.
And then you're going into their ecosystem, you have to immerse yourself in them,
Yeah.
so you have to really be very mindful, to be very sensitive to the culture that they are in and the ecosystem that they are in, and then immerse yourself
Hmm.
in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's super. That's key for anybody conducting research.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing field research, I think that's one of the key things that you won't really read up much in depth about, because we don't have a lot of documentation for conducting research here. But I think this is something that you need to be mindful of and just learn on the job. And I just keep on pointing this out wherever design research in Pakistan comes up. I'm like, just being culturally appropriate in itself
Yeah.
will have such a big difference on the research that you conduct and the insights that will come through, right?
Oh, yes. Oh,
So yeah,
they're so
I
much
think,
more keen to talk to you. They're so much more open. They're so much more
hmm,
comfortable.
yeah,
When you're asking questions, that they will talk to you. They will be very, it'll be a completely different experience if you come
yeah,
from that kind of a place.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, and I think this is like a completely like another conversation that
Right?
could, I
Like
think, like a very productive. And I really want to go ahead with this, but you
different
kind of
bag
have to
of
come back. Yeah, like
Yeah.
have to kind of come back to this. Yeah. Okay. So just talking about the hiring process once again. So I would want to now talk about what are the common mistakes that you guys see. So just first talking about like what are some of the common mistakes that you guys see during the interview process. Like what are some of the things that are red flags that you immediately identify, and if just even phrased better in terms of language, or just I think this phrase differently would help the candidate get through. So, Aisha, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I think a common mistake is that you're not able to walk me through a project end to end where you played a significant role, and
Mhm.
what that role was. So setting a context. So again, वही बात जो अहमद बार बार कह रहे हैं कि storytelling. How do you
Hmm.
even present yourself is extremely important. That's also telling a story. You
Yeah.
are the main character. You're selling yourself, and if you're not able to do that well, I that is points lost for me. So I want to see how you can set the context of what project you are demonstrating or describing to me, and then take me end to end and touch upon what your role was, what you did, how you added value, what you learned, what problems and constraints you faced, how you overcame them. I don't want to learn what the project was about, what the brief was, and all the different design thinking tools you use. Dekhiye, tools use karna, implement karna, again, Ahmed was saying you can learn these things over time and then implement them. That's the easy part. I want to understand if you have that awareness of self reflecting and understanding what you brought to the project, what you learned, what the outcome was, how you could have done it differently. Did you have that moment of introspection and say, okay, yeah, I think I did that this way, and maybe if I did it this way, it would have been a little different. Someone who can really articulate that and put that forward is someone who is curious, who is self aware, who comes from a place who is willing to take feedback, and if not, if they've worked in a team on that project. So it shows me a number of things about the personality of the person. And I'm not looking for the project. I'm not looking at what you have done, what app you've created, what problem you have solved. That is important, yes. But through that, I want to see you, what you brought as a person, and then as a UX researcher or a UX consultant or whatever post, whatever role I'm looking for, then I want to see those traits in you through that project, right? So that's what we look for essentially, and that's something that we rarely see. We see a very monotonous description of the project and the design thinking tool. So using all these buzzwords, these buzzwords, I what value will they add? We know these already, right? How did you use them? How did you implement them? What did you do with them is what I'm looking for, and that rarely comes through, if ever.
Yeah, I mean, those are great points, and I agree. Um, for me, though, like I want to go like a bit before even the interview starts. For me, like there's so many red flags, if you want to call them, that I just see in resumes or just how you're filling out the application. Typos being the most prevalent, and like my personal biggest pet peeve. Like it happens so often, right, Sinam? Like it's just um it's just yeah, how do you do that? Like you made your own resume, assuming you made your own resume, and you are applying, like you're using it to like get into somewhere else. So you didn't bother to like review it, or like you didn't bother to like ask somebody else to like verify if the page flow. And here's the thing, a lot of the times I feel like why typos end up creeping in to resumes is because कि आप directly जाके ना Figma या whatever tool you're using उस पे लिख रहे होते हो. Or that's no good, man. Like, because फिर आपको manual spell check करना पड़ता है, you have to use a plugin or whatever. Most of the times you're like, नहीं यार, like deadline आ रही है, बस फेंक दो. So yeah, dude, like if there's a typo on your resume, I can't take you seriously. ठीक है? So that's a big one. Another big one is the job posts that I craft, particularly for my team. Uska, there's like specific things that I want, and I am very clear कि अच्छा ये मुझे ये चाहिए. For example, जो पिछले साल मैंने hiring cycle conduct की थी, उसमें I was like, listen, everybody who applies, they need to write me a really short cover letter, like 250 words, like 300 max. Like, मुझे please thesis ना पढ़ाओ ना. कि what is something that you nurtured? Now that's a very clear prompt. It's clear-ish, a bit vague, but that's by design, right? Because I just want to see how you interpret that question. But I'm looking for that. और अगर आपके कवर लेटर में सिर्फ वही कॉपी पास्ट है कि डियर कंसर्न ब्ला 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 ब्ला, ये मैं यहाँ पे किया था, फिर मैंने ये किया था, like you didn't even bother to read the entire JD and like the job post, तो फिर मैं अब क्या करूँ, right? That just tells me कि hey, you don't pay attention to detail. That tells me you don't care about reading properly, and both of those are not things I want in a designer.
Yeah. You're
Sina,
mute.
you're on mute.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Won't happen again. Yeah. So just wanted like interview ke andar, like how Aisha mentioned, like interview specific. What are some of the things that you know could be improved and something that people can avoid doing?
I feel like what they could do better is pause and think of the question that's asked, and then respond. A lot of the times I've noticed, well, this is a very this isn't वो लोगों का मसला नहीं है. That's just the way this whole situation is, right? कि हमने अपने आप को कह दिया है कि interviewing is a very stressful process, and it is, right? Because I feel like हमारी I don't know, companies in our country or like companies overall, like we haven't had like a great track record of treating people as people. You know what I mean? We very much treat them as just like अच्छा like बस आ रहा है कुछ जा रहा है, like we don't care, हम तो बैठे हैं अपने बड़े बड़े महल में. So it's always like वो power imbalance बहुत ज़्यादा है, right? So that's just the way it is, right? So then people already are super freaked when coming into an interview. Or when that happens, you're already in a very reactive state. और आपको लगता है कि बस उसने मेरे से कुछ भी पूछ लिया तो अगले अगर 2 सेकंड मैंने जवाब नहीं दिया तो मुझे तो उठा के बाहर फेंक देगा. ये नहीं होगा. Like dude, like अगर मैंने आपसे सवाल पूछा है तो sit with it, take a few seconds and just see कि हाँ यार, that's a good question. Like अच्छा, let me think about this and then respond. So that's sometimes it happens where I'm just like यार सोच लो like इसके बारे में. So
yeah, it's fine.
yeah,
I think one of the things that I keep in mind if I'm going in for an interview is just making sure, like treating it as a conversation about
Yeah.
everything that I know and what I've done, as opposed to like a Q&A, because I think the Q&A then becomes very, very stressful, right? Because those sahi aur galat jawab wali feeling then sinks in, and then you're just fighting that throughout, as opposed to if you're just like, okay, fine, this is what I've done and this is the organization and this is what the interviewer wants to ask. Jitna aapko pata hai, and I think saying that you don't know about something during an interview process, it's okay as long as you're willing to learn it, right? Like you phrase it in a way that I don't know about this right now, but maybe on the job I'll be able to learn this as well. And it's just really phrasing it that way helps, because kisi ko bhi sab nahi aata, right? I mean, it's as simple as that.
yeah,
um
that's a great thing. I'm also like I look for, and I tell people that I'm just like यार इस round में like अगर आपको कोई नई चीज़ पता तो बस just tell me that, कि hey
yeah.
यार ये मुझे पता. And what happens is कि I ask them. So as I said earlier, कि at least 2 interviews तो होते ही हैं. तो पहली जिस interviews में जो चीज़ें उनको नहीं पता होती ना, I just tell them कि अच्छा go read up on them and just see what you find. And in the next interview, like I ask them about those things. And if they still don't know, then I'm just like, nah, like bye. You didn't bother to like look it up. So
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's nobody's looking for exact academic answer. Iska kya hoga? It's just you having an idea around it. And I think with design, there's so many things that we perceive so differently, that having an opinion on something in itself is sufficient for that process specifically, right?
You will also never find a profile that's going to perfectly align with the JD that you put out. So you have to keep in mind that you have to come from a place of, okay, I will nurture this resource. I will teach them what they don't know, and they just have to be open to learning. So it's really that I see more than someone who comes in with rehearsed answers and tells me, I know this, I know this, I know this, and so that actually I is something that I'm not too keen on. I would rather that somebody says, "Ki yaar, this is an area where I feel like I could improve a little bit. So maybe I'd focus more on this, even though it's not in your JD or the JD that you put out. And will I get an opportunity to do that with you? And I'm more keen on someone like that. That someone who can identify कि यार ये मेरा area is lacking and I would like to work on this with you. And these are the skills that I do have, and this is what I do bring to the table, right? So that's actually a more valuable resource for me, rather than someone who doesn't know, who knows everything and who's coming from a place of, that kind of an attitude.
Yeah, for sure. And I think just like perceiving any role, like when you're making a move from like one organization to another, I think like as designers, I think knowing why you're doing it is very important.
It's very important.
Like so for example, for me, if I were to make a switch, or if I do make a switch, it's always based on what is it that I want to learn further that I can't learn in my current role, right? Because you don't want to be switching every, I don't know, 6 months, but just knowing that, okay, fine, for me to reach here, like this is important. And I think as anybody who is applying or in that process of transitioning or wanting to transition, I think just having like a reflection on what do you know currently, what do you want to learn, and then which organization fits best with that. I think these are the three answers that can really help you navigate, your career shifts. So
Although, Sina, I do think that the younger resources, the very junior ones, they might not have a very clear an understanding of where their professional trajectory will take them,
yeah.
because हमारी design industry इतनी mature नहीं है
Hmm.
कि वो एक बहुत clearly देख सकें. So do they
Yeah.
have the that kind of, will they ask me is something that I'll look for then? Are they going
Yeah.
to ask me कि उनकी growth at UBL, or
Company.
what does
Hmm.
it look like for them? So
Yeah.
that is actually very important to me. कि यार, okay, is this person also thinking of longevity when they're thinking of this position and this place? And is is
Hmm.
is, is it someone who's going to stick around for a while? Is it someone who's actually going to grow with us? Because we're
Yeah.
a very young team right now, and
Hmm.
as like the industry, like no, there's no very mature team in the
Hmm.
industry right now.
Yeah.
So that's what I really look for, and that's very valuable to bring.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay. And just so guys have touched upon portfolio and resumes, and just like interview don'ts in a way. But just talking about the current sort of the design landscape that we have, and we'll get to what the landscape currently looks like, and how what your opinion is on it. But before we get to that, I would really like to ask, so we have different levels of designers currently in the industry. We have a huge chunk of junior designers or people who are entry level entering into the field, and then we have the mid to senior people, and then the bracket above. But just focusing on the entry level and the junior designers, what are some of the skill sets that you think we need to develop as a design community for us to sort of go further? So what should people be focusing on if they're looking into skills development?
You want to take that first, Emma?
No, I have to think about it. Because it's a very strong, big question. Like, what kind of skills? I mean, I'll tell you something, and then maybe you can jump from it, and then I can start again. So yeah, I think one thing I keep looking for is really strong foundational knowledge. This is something I notice is that a lot of people are focused on the tactical aspect of design, and
Mhm.
they're just like अच्छा नहीं हम like ये वाला map कैसे बनाते हैं और हम ये वाली चीज़ कैसे करते हैं, which is fine. Like it's great that you're asking that question and you want to learn how to do something, right? But
Hmm.
with design, it is always about the why before the how.
Hmm.
So I really just want people to be questioning that, right? And getting foundational knowledge is not difficult. बहुत like a fit up the resources आ गई हैं. The chief among them being the NN Group की website. I mean, dude, that is like just a treasure trove of everything that you want to be learning about the foundations of design. Right? So go to
Hmm.
that. I would say read up like 101, like 100 of everything, uh, focus on design principles, and then move into tactics, because then वो जो आपका जो भी tactical knowledge है, you will know why you're doing this. ठीक है? And once you know that, so the answers sort of you will see कि अच्छा they arise already, and you're like, okay, इसका तो ये जवाब हो सकता है.
Hmm.
I think also building on that, I feel what they can do then is also, because a lot of the junior ones come to us and say we don't have a project that might really align with what you are doing at the lab right now. And
Mhm.
my this thing is always that they then I tell them, or if somebody asks me and they're looking to build a portfolio, I tell them to just pick up on any prompt or redesign any, so depending on what they're aiming for. So if they're aiming for UI UX or UX research, so pick up any problem. There are so many right now. There is so much that you can work with that's already there. It's You don't have to have a real life prompt or brief to work on to build a portfolio. Pick up a common problem that we all face with the skill set that you have, the hard skills that you've acquired that Ahmed mentioned.
Hmm.
Show me how you apply them to a problem that we are facing, a profile like us, a persona like us might be facing. Build that out. tell me that this is how I use the skills, and it doesn't have to be a real life project that you did at university with a certain course or an industry project. That said, if you have the opportunity, do look out for industry collaborations, because I know Habib does that. I know that certain institutions are now collaborating and encouraging, collaboration between academia and industry, and they are pursuing lots of projects. So there's a lot of opportunity if you're at an institution already to build a portfolio with an actual project. But if you can't, then pick up something that's a actual problem that somebody faces on a daily basis, and then solve for it. And then tell me how you use your skills over there, and that's enough. You don't have to have a fully built portfolio. We're not looking for 10 years or 5 years of experience. We understand that you're coming from a place and into an industry that's not very mature, you know. So that's what I would say to younger ones who are looking to break into the industry right now.
Okay, I think that's pretty good. And then in terms of like one thing that I've sort of observed is that user research, like for example, conducting it in Pakistani context or just user research in general, the quantitative, qualitative, really connecting the design research part to your business research and like the data
Yeah.
integration or the overlaps that we have. I think that is something that not a lot of designers are focusing on.
Yes.
And for us to have a seat at the bigger table, I mean, we do slightly have that, but when you're the conference room में एक बड़ा table होता है और फिर एक पीछे वाली कुर्सी होती है उस पे, I think अभी हम पीछे वाली कुर्सी पे हैं, right? So sort of for us to join like people on the bigger table, I think that's like having a business acumen and really understanding, what are the company sort of goals, what are the metrics, how do you match those? I think having business acumen is very important for designers now.
It's very important.
To go up.
It's something that I think a lot of candidates do, at least a lot of these design labs or design led places come in with, is that they think that it's just going to be like IDEO and bicycles hanging from the roof and like post-its everywhere, which is what we aim for. Yes, it's a culture that we're trying to build. Yes, but before we get there, there's a whole big chunk of very serious looking stakeholders that you have to convince the design value of. So you have to really convey that the design is worth investing in. So we're still in that phase of where we are trying to convince people to take design seriously, and for that you need to speak their language. You need to convey and articulate things and show the value of design, and you can only do that not with a very pretty looking presentation or so they are looking for what dollar value it brings. That is what you have to emphasize on all the time, and that's a big disconnect that we see with candidates who are coming in. How does it add value? How does it add value? And that's something that you have to keep in mind, and you have to come in with, or you have to learn on the job to do very, very quickly. Otherwise, you're not going to be taken seriously.
For sure. Yeah. And I think, and I'm just saying, and I think one of the things that, along with all of the other sort of design skills that we are learning and like tools within our, sort of toolkit, I think just understanding basics of data analytics. And you can simply do that on just like, Coursera, Udemy. There's so many free courses that, anybody can sort of start off with. And I think that's something that we really start need to thinking about. And with a lot of people within the design industry, they're coming from CS backgrounds or like other fields. So I think it's easier for them to grasp those tools. I come from like, I've been trained as a designer. So if somebody like me can do it, I think everybody can at this point. Like I can very openly say that because, nobody taught me I did not learn like Excel or anything at school. That's something I learned on the job. So, so just coming from that sort of a background into learning, I think you just have to be open enough and you're able to do so.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So yeah, so I think we have some questions that be nice if we can answer them. The first one Azim is asking is that when focusing on user needs, how do you mitigate cultural bias and conflicts?
Emma, do you want to take that?
Um, I am curious about why you would want to do that. like I think being aware of the culture wherever
Mhm.
you're conducting that research is very much part of that. Um,
Hmm.
so maybe I'm unsure if I understand the question correctly, but uh, like what would be like a cultural conflict?
Um, I think just मेरे ज़हन में जो आ रहा है इसका, that is, for example, if you're conducting user research in different parts of the country, and you know, uh, so basically, if you're conducting different, so for example, if Punjab में अगर कोई चीज़ हो रही है जो KP में नहीं हो रही, so how do you sort of overlap for those? Or like, I think a way to phrase this would be, how do you design for diverse cultures and with their different sort of hues in it.
Hmm.
I think it comes back to that point that we spoke about having empathy and being able to immerse
Hmm.
yourself in a different culture and coming from a place of a very open mind. And I think that's
Hmm.
how you mitigate any kind of a bias that you come with, or any kind of
Hmm.
hypotheses or preconceived assumptions and notions, and
Yeah.
really immersing yourself in being open to open to any their environment, understanding that you're going in their environment to learn about them and it's not about you.
Hmm. Yeah.
So really not being coming from a place of egocentricity and just really immersing yourself in their environment is, I think, a short way of at least trying to be very sensitive to their other people's culture,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
and mitigating that. So I think that's how I would do
Yeah.
it. I would interpret that
Yeah.
question. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think just adding on top of that, it's not about sort of removing the culture bias or removing the conflict. I think it's designing for it. So as a
For
designer, if you've identified it, you have to design for it, right? Because that's what designers do. Design is all about context. So what would work in Europe or in America would not work for us here because of the different sort of, they're not conflicts or bias. It's just how our societal structures are. So I think
yeah.
just designing for them instead of pushing them down. I think that's the success for design here in Pakistan.
And that's the success of a real designer, actually, when you
Yeah.
are being very gender sensitive, you're being very
Mm.
class sensitive, you're being very culture sensitive, when you're designing
Yeah.
for it and you're taking that as a challenge. Those are not those are constraints, those are problems that you're solving for. That's what
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
where you come through as a designer.
Exactly. Yeah. And so then Fahad has asked, how has COVID impacted the hiring/interview process in design?
Much like it's impacted everything else. I mean, एक तो जो biggest impact ये है कि पहले I would conduct all my interviews in person just to see कि अच्छा like उस
Yeah.
person की like room presence क्या है, are they able to read the room as well, just how they conduct themselves, So that of course we have, you know, now we don't really get to do that in person. So we do that through a screen. So
Mm.
that's a bit of like a, this is like tough. But what it's also done is that now it's opened room for so many more people to apply. Pehle to like as
Mm.
far as Arbisoft was concerned, so we were very much looking for people, Lahore and surrounding
Yeah.
areas, and I'm sure like UBL में भी इस तरह ही होता होगा. But now like at least पिछले साल भी, when I was putting up my job, so I was just like, this is remote friendly, which would mean कि अच्छा you come in like, you know, for the orientation session for like a week, 2 weeks, and then like once every quarter or something, and then जो करना करो भाई. So
Mm.
that's how it's impacted everything though. Like isolation में कोई impact नहीं हुआ मेरे ख्याल से.
Mm.
I think pretty much what Ahmed said. I think it's exactly that for us. We prefer to meet them in person before we actually hire them, and that is a big part of our assessment. Is how they can read a room, how they can carry themselves, how they can present themselves. Are they on time? That's punctuality is a big
Yeah.
thing. Are they coming in prepared? Are they asking us questions about how they'll get in, what the location is, etc. So there's a lot of things that come through in a personality of a person or a candidate when they're actually coming in for an interview,
Mm.
and the energy that they bring. Is it positive? Is it something that they're coming? So it tells you a lot about a candidate when you meet them in person. But if of course that has changed, and we
Mm.
do multiple rounds of interviews now on Zoom with them, and I think that model has worked for us also. So it's completely all right. It's not changed anything. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And I think it has had more of a positive impact as opposed to, I think, like a negative one, like the interview pool being opened up, more people applying for more parts of the country. So I think like that's what COVID, like one of the benefits has been that,
Yeah.
it's really
Well,
sort of connected everybody very well together in that capacity. So this is a question more specific to you, Aisha, and that is, so it's Shahriar, and he just wants to get an understanding of what CX interviews look for at banks, as it's not just an app UX. So I think just
yeah.
like on the broader scale of it.
So the first part of the question is that what happens in CX at UBL, which is that it's like any other CX role that you would imagine. We go through the entire design thinking process of actually conducting the user research, setting some context. What problem are we solving? What are we solving for? What are the key metrics of success? What do they look like? Really defining that before we delve into, okay, how can we resolve this? अब उसमें different touch points आ जाते हैं आपके ऐप भी है टैबलेट भी है डिजिटल कॉर्पोरेट पोर्टल भी है ऑफलाइन ब्रांचेस भी हैं so then you decide what channel you want to redesign or design that intervention for and that's based on the preliminary जो आपने उसकी research की है जो data आपने gather किया है so maybe you'll have to talk to stakeholders they could be internal they could be external so it's it's a usual that's what a CX design thinking process doing process looks like and that's exactly what you do at the lab also is that you start with the preliminary research you go on to designing and then you test and then you hand it over to engineering and then there's multiple iterations depending on the feedback that you get what we look for at the bank so don't think that we're a bank we're a design lab at the bank a bank is a very complex ecosystem, very different. We are very forward thinking at the lab itself. We are very big on, somebody we don't want to hire bankers basically. We're looking for design thinkers, design doers, and that's what's most important to us.
Oh, okay. And so if you're not just talking about the app, so I understand that there would be some aspects of service design and just like UX at scale and organization design. So could you just talk a bit about how can some candidates exhibit those qualities or like just showcase that?
So we don't just want people who can churn out UX, UI, wireframes, and all of that. We do look for service designers, somebody who can, for example, if you're given a very strategic brief, a very high level strategic brief, we want to migrate X number of people from offline branches to app by this time. So that's essentially understanding the ecosystem from a very service design lens, right? And we want to be able to see that if you are prompted, if we give you that prompt as a case study to do when you are interviewing with us, are you able to think or ask questions about agar whiteboard challenges, are you asking the right questions? Are you trying to understand what actors there are in that ecosystem, what their behavior is, who the user is, what is the most common use case, and then really hash it out with us. So that's what we're looking for, somebody who is really sort of keen to understand the process and the ecosystem specific to that problem and not just focused on designing UI for the different channels that we have.
Okay. And I think like design, like organization design, and then I think organization design is like a completely different field, but I think service design and just designing for large enterprises, I think that's a completely different ball game when you're applying for when you're working in. And I think just doing some work pre-hand before knowing, okay, what are you actually getting into, because it could be a lot for some people as well, right? So everybody has their own appetite to the kind of work that they want to do and the kind of work that they can do. So I don't think there's a limit to what you can do. You can do everything, but just at that specific point in your career, what kind of work do you want to do? So I think aligning that is very important. Like, do you want to work for a startup, an agency, or like in a large organization? So yeah, okay. I'm just going to check if we have any questions on the Facebook group, and we don't. Okay. Any sort of ending remarks on the entire process, where the design industry is headed in Pakistan, or just like anything?
Emily, you want to take that?
Yes, plug for my company. We're going to be hiring a bunch of people in very many different roles related to content, user experience, product, UI specifically. So keep an eye out for job posts and apply.
Awesome. And just hear what Ahmed has said and just do exactly that.
I think the industry itself is going to mature very fast now. I think with the startups, all the the startup ecosystem, the way that it's booming right now, the design becoming more a part of the big conversations. I feel like designers need to play catch up now and really, sort of up their game and up their skills and really have a very good opportunity to get some very solid experience, whether it's with us or with startups. I think there is a lot of doors that's about to be open in the next few years for designers and design. There's a lot of room.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, and I think just keeping in mind, like, it's not just the apps now that we're designing for, with all of the startups coming up in the B2B space, retail in itself is such a huge market for designers. Okay, I think uski ke andar, if you start focusing and learning more about distribution, how does the entire network work? I think it's such an exciting space to design for itself. Okay, it's and the kind of impact that it's going to have as well.
Absolutely. There's a lot of room. There's a lot of room and there's a lot of opportunity for designers right now. I think it's a great time to be in the industry right now.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for taking out time on a Sunday, and this has been super helpful. And I really hope that whoever's applying or in the process, they really benefit from this. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sina.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.